Professor Yonghe Chang, guest speakers, colleagues, and the audience. I'm Li Hua from Southeast University in Nanjing. Firstly, I would like to extend my gratitude to Professor Zhang's invitation. And it's a great honor to participate in this symposium hosted by the University of Hong Kong, which offers perspectives bridging China and the world and the insiders and the outsiders. My talk today is about the emergence of the contemporary practice in Chinese architecture. In response to the symposium's question, how is the contemporary Chinese architecture defined? I would like to examine it from the perspective of knowledge formation and situate in a historical context. For this, the practice here encompasses not only design practice, but also a knowledge production. I will focus on one kind of knowledge formation that emerged in Chinese architecture roughly between 1992 and 2001, a time I found Professor Chang's lecture kind of skipped quickly. and Yes, and it's developed for the new practice. This knowledge centers on construction, 建造, and forms a coherence from ideas, institutionalized knowledge, to tools and objects. The consciousness construction of this coherence, along with the reflections on history and the reality, embodied within it, constitutes the characteristic of what has become contemporary Chinese architecture. The time frame of 1992 to 2001 was proposed through discussions with my colleague Ge Ming regarding shifts in modern Chinese architecture. Deng Xiaoping's Southern Tour in 1992 marked the beginning of China's rapid urbanization over the next 3 decades. China's accession to WTO in 2001 integrated its architecture production into globalization. During this period, China's design market gradually opened, but remained certain internal exploration relatively away from global influences. The rapid expansion of physical space spurred both a commercialized production and new resistant practices. Well, social economic changes profoundly impact architectural production in China. Changes in architecture knowledge were not inherently aligned, yet the knowledge built around construction, 建造, forged such connection. My talk consists of 2 parts. The first is about the context and the problems encountered by the new practices in the 1990s. And the second is to discuss construction of design knowledge through the lens of ideas, institutions, tools, and objects. Let's go to the first problem. Problem of the history of all the immediate past. Let's begin with the recent controversial renovation project. The upper is the original design and the lower is a hotel transformed from it. The original was a reception house built in Guilin's reed flute cave scenic area. In 1975, it exemplifies a local modern approach in China, blending modernist principles with vernacular language. The ground floor of the construction drawing included contour lines and annotations. These annotations of rocks in the site and showed how building integrated with the topography. These drawings show how the original spatial organization deliberately built up the open relationships between the interior and the outside view. But all these qualities are lost in the current renovation project. These projects were widely circulated in the 1980s. These are drawings by Shang Ke, the architect of the reception house. Well, a lot of criticism focuses on taste and economic issues. It indeed unveils a lack of awareness about modern history of Chinese architecture, which hinders discussions on modernity in Chinese architecture and of the value of contemporary Chinese architecture in China. In fact, many of the architecture students today do not know these works and even have no idea what about architecture activities in the 1990s. This is a widely used design textbooks, design principles of public building. Its first edition was published in 1981 and the second in 2001. The first edition had 43 Chinese cases, serving as a record of modern Chinese architecture of the time. 4 of them were from Guilin. But the second edition retained only 5 cases from the first, none from the Guilin. In its actually, in its 2008 edition, only one project, this one, Tangku's railway station were kept. They all were replaced by the new built projects. Yet, the core design principles remained largely unchanged. Comparing chapter structures of the first and the second editions, there was a shift in the priorities. Architectural artistry gained more important in the design. You can see this, the move from the list. Well, it is hard to tell how much the students read the book carefully, but it reflects the disciplinary consensus at the time. So go to the problem of knowledge, design knowledge. From a historical viewpoint, during the 1950s and the 1980s, architectural project in China has 3 major trajectories. Symbolic on the monumental, often represented by large-scale public buildings. Functional and productive, such as industrial buildings, housing, and hospitals. The third is a poetic and autonomous approach, often in relatively small scale landscape buildings, blending modern with certain locality. The reception house is a part of it. The Outline of Modern Chinese Architecture History, published in 1989, is the first real historical book on post-1949 architecture in China. And it was one of the early narratives which treated pre- and post-1949 architecture as a continuous process. Interesting, the 3 authors were not historians and took themselves more as architects. Gong Deshun, this person, and Dou Yide held administrative role in the industry at the time, while Zhou, in the middle, a design teacher in Tianjin University, and later becomes a historian of modern Chinese architecture. In particularly, Gong Deshun was an accomplished architect. He was a designer of the office building of the Ministry of Construction in Beijing in 1954. And Chaobasan International Hotel in Mongolia, which was regarded as a celebrated project of modernist design by Chinese architecture abroad. After the Cultural Revolution, Gong Deshun made a great effort for restoring architects' creative autonomy. Thus, the outline of modern Chinese architecture history largely represents architects' viewpoint and values. If we look closely at the cover image, we can find they are all important public buildings. The flagship hotel, the Great Hall of the People, and the bridgehead of Nanjing Yangtze River Bridge from the 1950s to 60s were all large projects with symbolic meanings and articulations. Among 65 colored images in the book, only two were industrial buildings with no housing or small-scale landscapes projects. This can be also manifested in the second edition of design principles of public building. I quote, public buildings of different purpose exhibit notable distinction in architecture, artistry. Civil buildings like offices, schools, and hospitals constructed in mass for public services should prioritize clarity, simplicity, and restraint. Large-scale edifices, hotels, theaters, stadiums demand sophisticated artistic treatment due to functional complexity. Memorial architecture prioritizes symbolic and spirit resonance over utility, requiring artistic sensibility, conceptual depth, and technical mastery. This kind of hierarchical account also extended to technical treatment. The 1961 building construction textbooks, which targeted civil engineering and building-related disciplines students and students. It distinguished the design principles for large-scale public architecture, industrial architecture, and general civil architecture. They claimed structure detailing and construction were simpler than of the general civil architecture than the large-scale public building. And they also mentioned that there was a notion at that time, construction detailing design was secondary to functional and formal consideration. And the third problem is the concept or relation between words and the buildings. Loosely using concepts is a big issue in Chinese architecture, but it could be exemplified by two texts, Feng Jizhong's Principles of Spatial Planning and Peng Yigang's On Architecture Spatial Composition, published during almost the same time. While the English title differs, they both use the same word in Chinese, 组合. But if we look at the designers, their design works, the distinction is obvious. Feng came from German modernist training in the 1930s, while Peng's were largely based on the Beaux-Arts tradition. The shared terminology obscures divergent knowledge system. When Adrian Forty observes observed the vocabulary of modern architecture, he found out modernist language is a system. He said, wherever two or more of the words form, space, design, order, or structure are found in company, one can be sure that the one is in the world of modernist discourse. Disturb one and you disturb the lot. The way of modernists using the word correspondent with its idea on architecture. It sought neutral, non-metaphysical terms, except those from language and science, to assert architecture autonomy from art. And one of its features is a general tendency to render what is concrete, abstract. Against about the problem, that's a context, the new knowledge centered on construction was formed. I will examine it from the four aspects: ideas, institutionalized knowledge, tools, and objects. It should be noted that in my talk, I hardly discuss the discourse on space. It doesn't mean that the young Chinese architects don't take care of it. On contrary, they took it as a core issue. However, they want to explore how it was formed through physical construction. Idea. In the second half of the 1990s, several manifestos emerged, such as Yong Chang's basic architecture, Wang Su's amateur architecture, architecture, Zhang Lei's fundamental architecture, and Liu Jiakun's forward to the beginning. This was a rare phenomenon in modern Chinese architecture history. We want modern architecture by two young Tsinghua University students, Jiang Weihong and Jing Zhiqiang, in 1956 was one of the few presidents. The manifestos of this period all expressed dissatisfaction with and critique of existing knowledge. Although their points differed, they almost rejected using the term architecture, often substituting it with building or house. The recurring use the words like fundamental, basic, and essential in these manifestos reflects their desire to establish a new starting point for architecture design. Learning from industrial architecture was one of them, co-authored by Yunhe Chang and Zhang Lufeng in 2000. They stated in the Chinese text, I quote, "In China, without the interference of aesthetics as well as ideology, industrial architecture comes closer to the fundamentals of architecture than other building types. The concept of basic architecture is introduced in the process. Basic architecture is built upon three sets of relationships: construction and form, building and site, and man and space, which are the essential problems of architecture design." Unlike the normal writing, the article adopts a quasi-mathematical formula listing 11 key equations. Each equation addresses a crucial issue in Chinese architecture at the time, including the relationships between architecture and decoration, fine arts, economy, and functions, etc. Starting from industrial architecture is not equal to civil architecture, and ending up with industrial architecture equals to civil architecture. they use biological deduction. They proposed a very modernist notion. Architecture meaning is architecture itself, and advocated architectural autonomy and independence, thereby separating so-called architectural art from excessive symbolism and Beaux-Arts tradition-based aesthetics. Using the mathematical metaphor, they divided art design into minus and plus. Um, I quote, in practice, self-constraint are often achieved by focusing on fundamental issues. In design practice, it involves exploring specific and basic problems, nature, and relations within the practice. Thus, the design process with self-imposed constraint becomes an exercise of manners. Although to some critics and architects, the new practice of this period were meant to compensate for the missing modernist discourse in Chinese architecture. Uh, well, it holds truth partly, but it also should be recognized as it was rather a selective reinterpretation. Their promotion of pure architecture was a resistance against the overcharged political interference and the symbolic meaning. Yeah. And the most important against the the problems I stated before, they take the industrial architecture was no longer a particular building type, but a way of thinking architecture issues and defining architecture in sense. It dismantled the typological classification and hierarchy established uh, through it in Chinese architecture. Around the same time, Nanjing-based architect Zhang Lei proposed his vision of fundamental architecture. In his statement, the term ordinary appeared more than one time. Constructing architectural quality through ordinary materials, construction methods, and building types became a characteristic of the new practices during this period. This is a Morningside Center of Mathematics office building designed by Fei Chang Jianzhu. They embedded the concept of a micro city into the spatial organization of the single building volume, creating a building complex within building using verified materials treatment while employing the then prevalent concrete frame structure. Another example is the student dormitory designed by Zhang Lei in 2000. Adopt a typical centered corridor arrangement. It translated the requirements for ventilation, storage, and privacy into architectural language and visual expression. For Wang Shu, even lamps, fixtures, process, pictures processed architectural quality as seen in his 1998 design called 8 Unlivable Rooms. He remarked, I quote, "For me, whether an architecture concept can permeate into details is not merely a technical issue, but a transformative perception that returns to the details and the life itself from the very beginning of the design." Well, one might attribute this to the project type available to them at the time. It is a conscious choice, and more significantly lies in the embedded architecture understanding and philosophy. Architecture significance resides not only in typology, scale, or symbolic reinterpretation, but in infusing ideas into the act of construction and the inherent architectural quality of building. Notably, madness differs from abstraction, returning to the basic or old original means reducing things to an incredible, irreducible state while preserving or revealing their fundamental attributes. An intriguing phenomenon is that all this Chinese architecture hardly produce diagrams like Peter Eisenman's, yet demonstrated prototyping thinking. This Yunhe Chang's variation diagram for split house originated from traditional Chinese courtyard, generating various configurations to adapt to different site conditions. Zoom in, we can see the wall solities, opening directions, and the staircase position. It's somehow like the Beaux-Arts Petit. We might call it abstraction with materiality. Institutionalized knowledge to schools. In 2000, two new architecture schools were established. The Graduate Center of Architecture at the Beijing University and the Graduate School of Architecture and the Nanjing University. Both aimed to build a new pedagogical system based on new understandings of architecture knowledge. They all took the construction and the tectonic as a core curriculum and the research design, research direction in design. It's for Graduate Center of Architecture in Beijing University. Here is a kind of, here is the research direction. This Graduate School of Architecture and the Nanjing University, and Professor Wang Junyang is a part of this. This design courses arrangement in Nanjing University. It's basic design, conceptual design, and the tectonic design. This documents the construction course at the Beijing University. The course was to build an actual building, a wooden workshop in the courtyard of the Architecture Research Center, Beijing University's Architecture Research Center. The complete documentation reveals a research process encompassing comparative analysis of multiple proposals, material-based structure calculation, etc. And also with the engagement of students in drafting calculation and the labor work on site. This is the approach to design as a process and the research is also reflected in Nanjing University's tectonic curriculum. The procession from material studies. Yeah, it's 5 minutes. Okay. So I skipped some images and yeah, this what they do. It's like a manual operation becomes important in the design process. And it might be exceptional in Europe on our American architecture schools, but they have the distinct significance for China, as Zhao Chen commented, to promote tectonic is to resist the negativeness in contemporary Chinese architecture, i.e. the tendency to label architectural creation with styles and as the commercial inclination of architecture subject to commercial economic power, and the cheap symbolism of architecture attached to political power or mass production driven by consumerism. And simultaneously, the tectonic perspective allows re-examination of China's architecture traditions and facilitates cross-culture reassessment of global architecture heritage. Yeah, that's the Zhao's perspective manifests in the editorial structure of the first issue of Nanjing University's A+D journal. And this inaugural issue featured international architectural works, projected international architectural works, projects by young Chinese architecture, criticism, including Liu Jiakun's comments on Wang Shu's Wenzhen College library, documentation of contemporary Chinese urban condition, and importantly, theoretical framework in global context by Professor Wang Junyang's interpretation of Bremden's study in tectonic culture. It also includes an interview with Feng Jizhong on tectonics. The bilingual application shows their intellectual ambition to contextualize domestic practice within international theoretical discourse with the attempt to constructing a modern tradition for Chinese architecture. The tools. The drawing. I skipped this. That means like drawing is that's all this important for architecture discipline, and tries to be from the Jack Kipnis viewpoint. A drawing has himself possess autonomy and independence, and drawing are important in Chinese architecture education, and that's a basis. And the rendering to show the representation, and as an analysis and the research tool, and also the guidance of construction guidance. This also drawn by Shang Kuo, the architect of this of the reception house. In fact, for a long period in Chinese architecture, drawing skills were equated with the design capacities, particularly favoring representational perspective. However, well-valued drawing were primarily regarded as practical knowledge with limited academic or theoretical discussion. And Yung Hechang stood out as one of the few architects who consistently reflected on this tradition. Against drawings in fine arts architecture, he promoted drafted drawing, and he differentiates between drafted drawing and artistic drawing. Quotes, for him, architecture essential skill is drafting, not painting. Painting or artistic drawing belongs to aesthetic cultivation, while draft drawing consists paper construction, and drafted drawings prioritize prioritize perception and accuracy over aesthetic quality. Skip this. This this 4-room bachelor of apartment drawing exemplifies this approach. At the first glance, it is a plan, but it actually combines 3 drawings together: plan, furnished plan with the shadows and the section. The coincidence walls and slabs suggest a transformation. Walls become slabs, columns becoming beam, and the base becoming floor height. Carefully drawn glass bricks specify materiality, creating what Zhang called unfamiliar, rational, poetic. Yeah, this is another drawing, and it's even like they put the asymmetrical drawing and the plan together, but it's not easy kind of to understand at the first glance. You have to read it carefully and to find some part is actually cannot be really shown in this drawing, in the plan. The sectional axonometric use a U-shaped cut through the building interior, unfolding to reveal a continuous spatial composition, a vision beyond instant perception. This already showed by Yonghe's. And what I want to emphasize, if you see this this kind of multiple these are kind of the collage of the different types of the drawing, and you actually, if you look at the drawing, you have to move from it. It's this kind of reading of the collage of the asymmetric and the multiple vanishing point perspectives keep viewpoint in constant motion, requiring intellectual and perceptual interaction to achieve interpretive discovery and pleasure. Wang Shu also demonstrated this accurate drawing consciousness in his sketchbook. Imagine the house. We see the design development primarily through axonometric sections and the instrument drawn plan. These drawings showed how he put the whole building with the fragments together in the sketch as a study of it. Yeah, the relation. The relation of the interrelation between the words, tools, and the objects. This Wang Shu's drawing for Chen Mo Art Studio, plan and the plan and the mirrored asymmetric drawing, and which it equally requires carefully reading, and at the same time, his description nobly avoids conceptual terminology, but using for concrete elements, corridor, room, wall, and platform. This makes the idea embedded in the material elements. With the drawing, the element also has certain abstract, actually, quality. This Yonghe Chang already talked about the project of Xishu Shu in Beijing, Xishu bookstore in Beijing. Okay. My talk kind of continued the story. It was demolished in 2000. That only existed for 4 years. But my argument is that because of the demolition, so therefore the idea is like the concept is more important than the drawings and more important than the real object. But actually, it's not the truth. What I want uh, to say it's like the drawing itself has its own life. If you look at this symmetrical, it's actually plan, section, and asymmetric put together. So show the quality you kind of really seen or experienced in the concept or the real building. But the perception is also astonishing and striking. So what I want to say is the success of Beijing Xishu bookstore precisely lie in the interplay and the independence between concept, drawing, object, and the perception. To sum up, contemporary Chinese architecture should not be perceived mainly as a temporal designation, but rather a new practice of knowledge. Alan Kohong once stated, uh, modern architecture could be understood more specifically as the architecture conscious of its own modernity and striving for change. This consciousness could serve as a way for understanding contemporary Chinese architecture, a consciousness of history, of reality, uh, and of striving to construct new knowledge. Through the efforts of the Chinese architects and the scholars, um, design has become a researchable discipline, while practice has become a driving force for the new construction. They indeed absorbed modernist ideas and approaches, as well as criticism of it, yet consciously selected, reinterpreted, and modified them based on their reflections of architectural history and reality in China. Clearly, construction is one aspect, and yet probably the most influential one on architecture discourse and the improvement of building quality in contemporary in present China. The exploration during 1992 to 2001 remained incomplete. In the subsequent wave of globalization, some continued to develop, some were revised while some were lost. Many of these issues still wait for deep reading and examinations beyond existing theoretical framework. I would like to use Liu Jiakun's comments on the Wenzhen Library by Wang Shu in 2001 to end up my talk. Although we can easily raise the critical wills and express ill satisfaction, I still prefer this touching and but controversial design rather than a perfect uh, mediocrity. This may be the picture of the time. Thanks for your attention.